we didn't really spend a lot of time looking at that. But you still have it, and it's after tonight. That's yours. If you still got it here, take it home. It probably doesn't really need to be here anymore. But I purchased those on January the 13th. 21. So it's been, I don't know when we started. It would have been probably sometime later in January of that month, of that January 21. So it's taken us, obviously, we've done them on Wednesday nights. There's been a few on Sundays, and then sometimes that I wasn't here or wasn't teaching. But it's taken us a while. I have enjoyed it, and hopefully you have enjoyed it in the process of it as well. After tonight, I'm teaching on Sunday morning because Ben isn't going to be here. And I've kind of got a wrap up of all of this. So our Sunday morning Bible class won't be as thorough as what Ben has been teaching, but it'll be a very broad scope, sort of covering, looking over a lot of different things. And then read books that Dad taught 2 or 3 classes out of. He'll be teaching the next handful of Wednesdays. And my plan is, if everything goes well, to start back like August the 31st, I think. So, or September the 7th or 14th, whenever Dad gets finished. So I'm not going to put any pressure on him. If he wants to take an extra week or 2, that'll be fine as well. Book of Revelation, it seems hard to believe, but we have made it to the end of this timeline. The book is the 27th of the New Testament, the 66th of all. The word revelation, you may see the word reveal in there, to reveal something. Some of you may be familiar with things being revealed. Sometimes people do gender reveals for their kids, let you know they're going to have a little boy or a little girl. Sometimes they burn down the house in the process. I wouldn't recommend it. Those kind of things. It's a lot easier and better if you just say, we're going to have a boy. It works a lot better that way. If you watch, Will told me the other day that he had watched some kind of movie, and he said, you know how I know there's going to be another one? And I was like, what's that? And he said, they revealed a character at the end. And so if you've watched franchise movies, you see somebody shows up at the very end, you're like, oh, they'll probably make a movie about him later. But to reveal is to sort of expose or present something that maybe no. And Revelation is a revealing of a lot of different things. There are studies that can be done on Revelation that can become super in-depth. There can be rather superficial, anywhere in between. But because our series of lessons has been about one lesson per book, then that's what our focus is going to be tonight. And in particular, our focus tonight is going to be about the churches in Revelation. I was going to divide you up. I actually had planned to divide you up by birthdays, but there's a lot of people here. So I feel like it might be easier if I just say you're in a group and you're in a group. But we might need to move around just a little bit. You're not sort of overhearing everybody else as what it is. But I will sort you out here in just a second. Each group is going to get a sheet of paper from me, okay? Now, I know I'm a school teacher, but I don't want to have to go over this more than once, so I need everybody listening, all right? But you will get a sheet of paper from me that looks like this, and it will say a name of a church at the top. For instance, this is Ephesus. It's the first one. Right below it, it'll say Revelation chapter 2, and this one says verses 1 through 7. So that's what your group would want to read. You don't have to read. Most of them are a fairly short 7, 8 verses. Pat, I apologize for sending Pat up there. I wasn't sure if we was going to get done or not. He had to read everything. I will say this. I always sit up front on Wednesday night. I sat back there. The minute it popped up, Mary and Jameson both turned around and looked at me and said, well, that's awful long. So I'm never sitting back there again. It's like I have to sit there one time and they immediately start fussing at me. But this will tell you what you're going to read, and everybody will read your section. And then there are 2, 3, 4 questions that you're going to answer about what you've just read, okay? On the back is a map, and it'll show you about each of these. So when we go over this as a group, you'll have some information for the whole thing as well. So our goal here is to you are going to focus on one, but then the second part, then we'll be able to kind of focus on all of these. These are all 7 different locations you can see on the map. I don't know how to scale it is, but you'll be able to see where it is. They're all in what's referred to as Asia Minor, often in the book. If you were to go home or to look on a map, it would be the country of Turkey today. Sometimes you'll see it in the news or whatever, but that's sort of where we're talking about right there. So again, I'm gonna do a little bit of dividing here. You may need to move just a little bit, but Mom, if you and Will go here with Ben and Melvina, Dad, if you and slide back there with Jill, Jameson, and actually Jameson and Brandy, you all stay there. Raymond, you and let's see, Kelly, Raymond, you and Kelly slide over here with Dad and Jill. Connie and Tony, let's see, y'all. If y'all want, you can slide over here with Brandy and Jameson. Got to make you move. Connie, you look comfortable. That's why I had to get you moving right there. I want to say how many groups I got. 1, 2, 3. Let's see. I gotta make sure I got this right. All right, you 3 can all be one group. All right, it's a troublemaking group. I don't know if I trust y'all, but y'all try to behave best as you can. Billy and Sylvia, Linda, and so you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, you and Sheila can be a group, and Pat and Marilyn, y'all can be a group. All right. Can you have Laodicea? No, we don't give anything that you ask about. All right, so hold on just a second. So again, one person's going to get the paper. What I would recommend is if you got one person in there that has ink pen or pencil that can write, probably the person that has legible writing. If it's somebody that you can't read, that ain't going to work out very good. Or who's writing you can't read is what I meant to say. It's not going to work out very good. All right, again, I'll give you a few minutes. Everybody should read their section, look over their section, and then y'all can discuss the questions. All right, you all are Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira. Lucille, you want this? Sardis, Philadelphia. It's the hardest one. You can be mad at her whenever all the questions are. All right. So again, at the top, it'll say what your church is. It'll give you a handful of verses to read. So everybody would need a Bible or something like that to just read theirs, and then you can discuss it then after that. Flip it. Yeah, you don't look at the colored side. It's the questions up at the top. It'll tell you you're reading Revelation 2 or 3 or whatever, okay? (18 to 29). Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to. It should probably be New King James. So, but I don't think it would. It shouldn't be too different, huh? What you got? New King James? Should.
I just asked him what this was in. You know me and my words.
So. first question. Everything it should be. If you're at the New King James, it's verse 2 in the New King James. Nobody has the New King James Bible. So, verse 2. I know your your works of your labor, your patience, your yeah, yeah. Don't you don't let her tell you the wrong answer now. Billy, you got them all right. I'd hate for them to all fail. I'm just glad you're here. I'm just glad you're here. Everybody good back here? We finding answers. John. You screenshot it.
I'm a scribe.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine. You just said it looked pretty.
Yeah.
Do what? I thought you said we're tenured. It's like, Tony, you ain't taught school in 45 years. I don't think you. I don't know her 1 year of PE before she went to the post office really counts or not. So. Right, good. Good deal. Did you write them all down? They chose you, so they said your handwriting.
It's not too good.
Oh, it's all right. Text me your mom's address. Yeah. I got to think about it the other day. I thought, I can't. I'm sure it's something Maple Avenue, but yeah. Just send it to me. I've got my lesson for Sunday morning already up there. I think I'm just going to tack the songs onto it because I'm singing. I think I'm just going to put them on the end of that. So. All right, guys, just a couple more minutes, so we'll have time to discuss them. I've always heard like 90, 95, something like that. I think it said 95 in the book, but okay. All right, we ready? Group 1? We ready? Group 2, we ready? Group 3? Group 4? They've spun some answers in there real quick. So just circle C for all of them. It's bound to be right. Y'all good? Linda's working in 2 different groups over here. She either knows everything or don't know nothing, one of the others. So I don't know. All right. Well, I had not turned our recording on, so let me talk for just a second if somebody is listening. But what we've been doing is each of our groups have been assigned one of the 7 churches of Asia. They've had a series of questions to answer, and then we're going to discuss them here as a group. What I want us to do what I want us to do is we'll go through each one. You all are fully aware of the fact that they have questions that you've not seen. But if you'll flip the paper over the back side, there is a series of yellow boxes. The same yellow box will pop up on the screen here in just a second. So if one person has the paper, everybody else should be able to see it as well. The questions are at least somewhat from that. So they'll pop up here on the screen and we'll see it. I have a few things that I'm going to throw in along the way as well. But this is about specific issues in each church. And a real quick note, each letter is addressed to the angel of the church. And there's a lot of interpretations that have been offered regarding the identity of the angels of the churches. Angel is a messenger sent by God or by man or by Satan. John sees a spiritual vision comprised of 7 lampstands representing the 7 churches and 7 stars in the right hand of Christ representing the angels of the 7 churches. That's in chapter 1. One explanation proposes that an angel represents the inward spiritual character of the church, while the lampstand or church is a light bearer to the world, provides the outward spiritual light. You can see that in Matthew 5 or Philippians 2, 14 and 15. I'm reading a note from someone else. This is not necessarily my saying for all of this. As the revelation of Jesus Christ is sent, signified by his angel unto John, it follows that the message to each church is revealed by Christ, the author, and addressed to the angel of each church, who in turn signifies the message to John. The angels are addressed, the churches are to hear. You can take with that what you want, but everything you read was written in red. I don't think anybody had any part of their reading that would have been in black. I think it was almost entirely, if not all, in red. So it's all the words of Jesus. The first one is Ephesus, and that's in my first group over here. This is described as the loveless church. For each of these, there seems to be something good, there seems to be something bad, something to go home with, as it were. So, to this church includes what kind of things? What did they say? What was Jesus saying about the church at Ephesus? What were some good things that they mentioned? Patience, labor, not bearing those who were evil, testing what will? False apostles or teachers. And it also said they hated the deeds of the who? Nicolaitans. Now, it's not a whole lot known about the Nicolaitans, but some believe or describe them as a Gnostic set from the time period. They seem to be equated with those that were mentioned. Some of you might have read about Balaam and Jezebel. It seems to be some similarities there, but altogether, the best way to describe them is sort of a group that seemed to represent immorality, compromise with idolatry, or something along those lines. Yes. Right. Right. This is on the interior. So, not unlike a little bit of how we talked last week about how things can get jumbled within the church fairly easy. So back over here to Ephesus, your second question, what was the criticism, though, of the church? It had lost its first love. What does that mean? What do you think that meant, group?
When they first become Christians, they're on fire, they're passionate, they're give me something to do, they go around telling everybody, but over time, you see that fire cool down. I think that's what's transpired, is they've lost that initial love.
And that the word there, the loveless church, is. The third question that they had was, what would be the reward? Repent. So that seems like it's somewhat of an odd saying. You know, we might say heaven, it would be neat, but all of this is a sort of symbolic revelation. So the wording, all of your answers on your last question will probably be fairly similar, but it's like they're written differently about each one. But the point of that being is that if we look at the second, they lost their first love. That sounds bad, but is it fixable? So the church at Ephesus could be described as loveless, but does that mean that the church of Ephesus will always be described as loveless? No. And so with anything, if it's going through sort of a bad or a negative time, it can be fixed, but there would have to be work that would be included within it. All right. Let's go to the second one. This is the church at Smyrna. And if you are if you're looking at the church at Smyrna, this is verses 8 through 11. Jesus introduces himself as the first and last to the church in the city that would claim to be first. So Smyrna is described here as the persecuted church. I think we know what the word persecuted means, but let's look into it just a little bit. My second group right here. The Lord knows the works, tribulation, and poverty of this church and its opposition by blasphemous Jews called the what? The synagogue of Satan. What is a synagogue to Jewish people? The Jewish church is how we would relate to it. So if we're talking about in the first group, there were people that were within the church. There's also people that are outside of the church. And so this idea of persecution in Smyrna, you see there can be problems both inside and both outside of the church. How does it say in verse 10, group 2 here, how does it say that these saints would suffer? I didn't hear it. Put in prison, yeah. Put in prison. Anything else? There was a T word, I think, that was tested and have tribulations. So would you describe being put in prison for your religious beliefs as a test? Absolutely. I would think being put in prison for anything would be a challenge, but being put in prison for religious beliefs would certainly be a test. The word tribulation is there. Have you ever heard the word tribulation used in a good way? It always means there's something bad is about to happen. A lot of times the word trial goes before it, right? There's trials and tribulation that is used, and that's how it's described here in Smyrna. But now, just like there was a reward for Ephesus, what was the reward for the faithfulness of those in Smyrna? That they would receive a crown of life. Now, Will said a minute ago they'd eat from the tree of life. Kelly said there would be a crown of life. What do both of those things just really mean? Eternal life, right? And so we think about eating from a tree of, that's something good, right? You know, get a piece of fruit from a tree, or a crown of life. You know, I don't know, crowns may not do anything for me, but it's sort of a reward, an honor or something. But there's some sort of positive end in both of these. So both of these were churches, in many cases. Ephesus, loveless, had kind of brought it on themselves. Smyrna, persecuted, was dealing with outside sources. Both of those are things that we might have come in contact today, right? Might our church become loveless if we weren't careful? Might there be persecutions from the outside? It absolutely could. Absolutely. Yes. Right. Absolutely. Okay. So let's go to the third one. This is Pergamos, Pergamum, depending on, a lot of times depending on if you're reading in Latin or Greek on that. But this is group back here. This is called the compromising church right there. Guys, your first question. This church was commended for remaining fast and not denying its faith, even when what happened? Antipas was, it says, described a faithful martyr. Antipas was killed. It sounds to me like in reading that this is somebody who went to their church and he was killed probably for his religious beliefs. Now, how might it be a challenge to a church if someone in the church was killed for their beliefs? How might that become a challenge to a church? You might be next. And I don't know why this guy was killed, but it would seem odd that the guy that was sitting beside you on Sunday wasn't there the next Sunday because of, this. But it said that they were commended for what? What had they done, group 3? Even in the first question, what had they done even though that guy had been killed? I'm on question 1. I'm just back into it. It said they were commended for what? Yeah, I'm asking the words that I gave to you. You don't have to look for answers on this, but for remaining fast. And so, as with all of them, there's a commendation. There's something good that they went through a difficult time, but that church is still there. They're still remaining fast to the faith. Okay. Now the second question, because we've seen it in number 1, number 2. What was the criticism of this church, group 3 at Pergamos? Okay. Balaam and the Nicolaitans again, right there. Balaam, who we see here, it's written on, well, I don't know if it's written on your paper, it's written on mine, but who was unable to curse the people of God, counseled Balak to send the daughters of Moab to entice the men of Israel to engage in lascivious worship. We talked a little bit about that a week or so ago, about how that this guy knew what was right, but he worked for the king, and he kind of convinced, he told the king sort of a way that could can trick the people, for lack of a better way of describing it right there. But we've seen in group 1, we've seen in group 2, group 3 at Pergamos, what would be the reward for those who repent? All right, so a hidden manna and an inscribed stone. Now, we talk a lot about New Testament writers referring to Old Testament stories. What is hidden manna? Why would that have appealed or been something that would have made sense to the readers here? Absolutely. And who was provided manna from heaven? In what story in the Bible? Yeah, so the Jews traveling through. So this would have been a story. When I hear manna, I don't think, hey, come over to my house on Sunday, we're going to have manna. But I would think I was starving and just, it was like manna from heaven. Like I rounded the corner and there's a gas station or whatever. That kind of manna is maybe an unexpected gift bestowed upon you. Now, the idea of this white inscribed stone, kind of unknown, but we see white a couple of different times. And white typically describes what? It typically describes purity. And I think there's white is mentioned maybe in a couple of other groups reading here as well. And so even going through their difficulties, they would still be sort of their name written on the stone, as it were, the purity, the group that earned it. So again, we've seen 3 different descriptions of a type of eternal life, but they're all 3 completely different. Yes, sir. All right, let's go to our 4th one. All right, 4th. Everybody ready? They look nervous. They all 3 look nervous. I don't know if they're with us or not here. We're counting on, let's see, this is Linda and Annette and let's see, Ella. So this is Thyatira. This is described as the corrupt church. Probably not a description that you would want tied to your name. But the first question, though, for them, the church was commended for its works of what? And I think there were 4 things. Patience, faith, service, and or love. All 4 good things. If somebody walked in here and said, this church is to be commended for its love, its work, its faith, and its patience, would that be a feather in the cap of the church? Those are things that we would all strive for. So notice it says the corrupt church, but question number 1, that's the greatest thing you can do. So the second question, what condemnation does the church receive? What was maybe a negative about the church? No, you're good. You can get specific, but just in general, allowing the teachings of Jezebel, as it were. Now, from what I've sort of read and looked at, whether Jezebel represents a specific person there, or if that's just a generic title, that could probably be debated. But the name Jezebel is a reference to the wife of King Ahab, who had influenced her husband to introduce the worship of Baal into Israel. That's all the way back in 1 Kings. The Jezebel in Thyatira was teaching compromise, as Linda said there, fornication, eating of things sacrificed to idols. There may have been a person named Jezebel. It's possible that that was just a broad name that was given. But either way, it was somebody introducing something that did not need to be introduced. But I've asked this question 3 times. I'll ask it a 4th time in your all's group back there at Thyatira. What was the reward for those who would hold fast? Good. So all of those things sort of make it sound like you're in control, you're ruling, you have power over other groups. And so if we go back to eating of the tree of life, we go back to wearing a crown, you're seeing these kind of, you have you're fed by God and your name is on the column, as it were, or whatever. All of these, again, there is a reward. Even in the negative, it can still be fixed. Okay. Let's go to the next one. This is Sardis. This is the dead church. Probably not something that you would want to describe yours, but it says in chapter 3 and verse 1, you have a name that you are alive, but you are dead. Think about that for just a second. You have a name that you are alive, but you're dead. Have you ever known a church that could be described like that? An organization that exists, and there's people that are there. If I went on Sunday at 11, there would be human beings sitting there, but they've not done anything in 40 years. You ever known? And what will eventually happen to that church? It will eventually for real die, but it may have been dead long before that, if we're thinking about it. All right, so this is, yes. Right. 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 Sure. It's funny, the exact thing I have written right here, the church was in a city that had a glorious past, but the city was careless and it's now dead. All right, so Lucille, your all's group right there. The works of the church are not perfect. Oh, I'm sorry, Ella. Yes. Yeah. So you have way more than I needed, and also I'm not taking it up and grading it. So your grade will be fine anyway. But I had it narrowed down. You have a lot more, but everything you just said is the correct answer. Just you're good on that. So I won't make you stay after anything to do anything like that. All right. So the works. Let's go here to my group 5 right here: Lucille, Linda, Billy, and Sylvia. The works of this church at Sardis were not perfect. And it is told to be what? To be watchful and to strengthen the things which remain, that because they are ready what? So what is the lesson there for a church? To be watchful and to strengthen the things that remain. What does the church need to be watchful for? To be on guard. What does it mean then to strengthen the things which remain? So we can't just say, oh man, the church made a bad mistake 20 years ago and it is what it is. Well, that mistake might have cost members and you might have had 100 people and now you got 10 people. But when is the time to fix it? Right then. It's always time, right? It's better to do it now than to do it later. Also, to remember what they had what? Received and heard, and to do what? So this is clearly a church that has been taught and knows what should be done. There's just been mistakes or negligence or whatever word you want to use that has prevented them from doing it. It says you can still remember what you've been taught, what you've heard, and you can still fix it. Revelation 3 and verse 3, if the church doesn't watch, how will the Lord come? As a thief. And you've heard this used a million times. If you knew a thief was coming to your house, you would be there, right? But thieves don't usually come to the house when you're there, right? Why do they come when you're not there? You don't know when they're going to come. Well, likewise, when will Jesus come? Yeah. October 12th, 2022 at 4 p.m. Eastern time would be super specific, right? What would you be doing on 12th, 2022 at 3:50 p.m.? I'm right here. I got everything straightened out. I've paid off my debts. But because why? Because that's the end, and I want to make sure that it's done. But were you doing that because you were wanting to do what was right, or were you trying to make sure you had the homework done before the teacher took it up? Your heart may not have been in it, but you're like so that's why we see there in Revelation 3 and 3 that it becomes a thief, but you got to be watchful for it. Now, how do let's go on to the next one. What's the reward of those? Revelation chapter 3, verses 4 and 5 says, what's the reward of those who had not defiled garments? This is your third question, Lucille, Linda, and Bill and Sylvie. What was the reward? There you go. It said they would walk with Jesus. They would be clothed in white. So we come back to our white right there, and their names would be in the book of life. Now, that's probably the most specific heaven description. That actually probably fits the heaven description that we think about more than any. But once again, all five that we've seen so far have given some kind. All right. This was Pat. And I did my math terrible, so we ended up with 2 groups of 2 here at the end. But Pat had earned it tonight. You know, he's worked hard tonight. This is the church at Philadelphia. This is described as the faithful church right here. So how does Jesus introduce himself to this church? Don't have that one. So in chapter 3 and verse 7, it'd help if I was on the right one. Chapter 3 and verse 7, it says, to the angel of the church in Philadelphia, I write, these things says he who is holy, who is true. Here's where your answer is. He who has the key of David. Okay. Who is David? The king of Israel. Why would it be nice to have the king's key? You can access anything, right? I have a master key for Garrett County High School, and I can't get into the janitor's room. I don't know why, but it doesn't really work as a master key if I can't get in to that one room. You got to go get a dolly or whatever. No, it doesn't work. But somebody's got the key that matters. And who's the most important person in the building? First who's got the key is who you can go to. Well, Jesus is having the key of David. We also see the word keys to the kingdom used as well, right? Who would you like to, if you want to get to the kingdom, you need to know the person who's got the keys, right? There's a reason that the word key is used in a couple of different ways. It's an object that turns a lock, but it's also main points or whatever that can get you somewhere. All right, do we have the second one? Second question. The church was commended for its little strength, keeping what? Keeping his word and not what? And not denying his name. So again, we've got a commendation, we've got a well done here, as it were. Now, I think in my second group here at Smyrna, the term synagogue of Satan was referenced. And we don't have time to dive into all of this, but those afflicting this church were described also as being the synagogue of Satan. Pat Maryland, did you see that word, that term used in your reading? Claiming to be Jews, but they were not. The real Jew was one inwardly circumcised in the heart, worshiping God in the spirit, rejoicing in Christ, what have you. What would become of those Jews? Absolutely. So those people who were Jewish, because that's who the gospel first went to, if they truly believed, and Isaac talked a little bit about this on Sunday night, that they would go and worship at the feet of Jesus. Your other question there, guys, how would the church be rewarded? All right, they would be kept from trial. And it said one other thing, they would be made a what? I don't know if y'all got this one or not. If you don't, it's okay. Well, I have that they would also be made a pillar in the temple of God. Think about what does a pillar do? Hold something up. So if you take a pillar off, what's going to happen? Think about those big houses that have multiple columns in the front, or the U.S. Capitol that's got the columns around the top. Just removing one of those will do what to the structure? It'll weaken it. It'll damage it. It might completely destroy that structure right there. But the church is rewarded. It said that they would be made a pillar in the temple of God. So that church would be a part that would hold up heaven, as it were. I would hate to think that I was part of something that brought it down, right? So again, we have a description here of some kind of reward that would go with it. All right, let's go to the last one. I would argue probably the most famous of the seven, the most well-known, is the church at Laodicea, described as the lukewarm church. First question, the criticisms here: what are its works and what would be the result? Neither hot nor cold, but not like the Goldilocks story, right? Where the one was too hot and one was too cold, and the one that was just right. But it said that they were neither hot nor cold. And so there's a reason maybe for that. The second question I had to answer: how does the church pride itself? How is it described? And they didn't need anything. Do we get that way sometimes? I got everything I need. I don't need anything else. Sometimes we get that way and we let it spill over into religion, right? Things are good. Things are fine. Don't worry about it. I don't really care one way or the other. We're good. But it's describing them as neither hot nor cold. They're described as lukewarm. And it says here that they're rich and they're in need of nothing. Are we in need of things even if we are rich? And you can define rich however you want. What do we usually think of when we think of rich? We usually think of money, right? How many of you have ever said it'd be, if I had enough money, I'd buy this or I'd do that? We've all made that comment, right? And it might be something necessary, but it might be something fun. If I had enough money, I'd take a tour around the world or something like that. Well, a lot of times we get, it might get kind of frivolous in that kind of thing. But if we're not careful when we have that, then we do what with that money? We start thinking about sort of using it for those other things, and what gets left behind? Spiritual matters. So they talk about the rich man. It's easier, for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to get into heaven. The point of that story is what? Don't put your money in riches. Now, Ben said the other day in class, she's like, "Yeah, to mean it doesn't. You're not going to be to have money. That's not what it means. But it can be if we do what with it? We sort of stack it up. We sort of hold on to it, and we say, this is mine. I know the church could use it, but this is mine, and I'm not going to do anything that would maybe help." What? Right. We're going to see that here in just a little bit to finish here. What does Christ counsel the members to buy from him in Revelation chapter 3 and verse 18? They said they needs to buy what to become what? You need to get gold refined in fire from him to be rich. Well, they're already rich. He's like, "Nah, you're not rich. You need to get it from me." They need what kind of garments? White garments that'll clothe them. And he's probably saying this to people. Say, "I got closets full of clothes, but this is what we got right here. It said they needed what, Sheila, to anoint their eyes. They needed salve to be able to anoint their eyes. And what he's really saying right here is all this stuff that you think you have doesn't matter. What you really need comes from who? Comes from God. And if we get too worked up in all these things over here, we're forgetting about the things that come from God. Because who got that? Who did this come from? My work, my efforts, my. And then when it's bad, then it's like, hey, God took it all away from me. Well, no, it wasn't yours to begin with right there. The last thing, Christ chastens those that he loves. Think about that for a second. We think about getting in trouble. We've done something wrong. But how many of you have ever gotten in trouble and the first thought that comes to your mind with the teacher or somebody's like, man, they don't like me. We can fall into that real quick, right? Sometimes kids, give you that at school, right? I don't like you. No, the reason I'm chasing you is why? Because I love you. That's the point of this. No. And so with each of these 6 that we've already seen, number 7 has it as well. There's a reward mentioned in Revelations 3, 19, 20, and 21. What's the reward for them? Eat with Jesus and sit with him on the throne. So in each of these cases, yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. It all matched locally. So in each of the 7, I know that we had specific studies for each group, but hopefully you've seen that there was something positive for each one, right? But there was also something negative for each one. But if they would fix the negative, then there was a reward for them. I think our lesson for us tonight should be pretty obvious. And this is going to go into the invitation right here. The lesson for us here is that there is something good and positive to say about every single one of us, right? Almost everybody we come in contact with has positive attributes. But there's also something negative about every one of us. Some things that need to be fixed. The thing is, mine is different from yours. And yours is different from the person that's in the row with you or across the way from you. And so because of that, we have to address our own issues. The church of Laodicea didn't really need to read about the church of Smyrna. And the church of Pergamos didn't really need to read about the church at Thyatira. They had their own issues. We too often start thinking about the church at Thyatira and the church at Smyrna and the church at Ephesus, and we forget about the church right here. We think about that individually as well. We start pointing out the things that are wrong with others and forgetting I've got things that need to be fixed as well. The good thing is, though, every single one of these had a solution, right? It had a fix. And all 7 churches were fixed in a way that they would have an eternal home in heaven. However you want to describe it. Fruit, if it's a crown, if it's sitting on the throne, whatever it is, they all ended up in the same spot. But there had to be a solution. There had to be a fix there in the process. And the point of the church, the point of us together, is to provide that fix and hopefully that solution for you as well. So whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever the issue, if there's any way that we can help you. Jesus